What is going on, everybody? We are live. How's everybody doing tonight? If you're joining us just now, we're just getting started. So thank you for stopping by. Another last minute live stream, I think. But
we're kind of getting
you
people
know,
used to Wednesday night.
yeah. And then one day we're just gonna throw everyone for a loop and put it out on Thursday. And no, I'm just kidding. But no, we figured, Jeremy, you're going to be going on vacation here pretty soon, so we're not going to have really any more time right now than the next few weeks to do a live stream. So he's like, "Hey, you got anything you want to talk about? I want to hang out tonight." So here we are, and yeah, thank you so much for joining us wherever you are from. If you're on the Techthusiasm side or the home theater gamer side, we always appreciate having you here. And let's see here. If you have a question, we are going to be answering a lot of questions tonight, hopefully. So if you wouldn't mind, put a capital Q in the front so we could easily see it and mark it. Both Jeremy and I will be going through just kind of marking them as we go along. We have a couple of little things that we kind of want to discuss here right in the beginning. And then basically we're just going to open it up to questions and talk about maybe whatever comes to mind, right? That's the whole plan.
Yeah, we were rolling last week with all kinds of discussion and questions. So
exactly, yeah, and
similar experience tonight.
Hopefully, yeah. We were killing it last week. A lot of questions. And I will say, if you have a question and feel that you want to support either channel, feel free to throw a super chat or a super sticker. Not required, but much appreciated. Anything you can do to help out, that you wanted to help out, show your support for us and for what we do, is much appreciated. But like we said, or like I said, you didn't say it. What are your thoughts on this, Jeremy?
I think it's like I need like $1,000 minimum. So
yeah,
definitely required.
I got some upgrades I need to make. So if you guys could, I need a new roof on the house. Yeah. So if you guys could just
buy a new car soon.
Right. Sure. So yeah, we're just going to kick things off here. Now, Jeremy, I know that you said you had a couple of things that you wanted to kind of start off with, in regards to like the Kaleidescape disc ripping stuff.
Yeah. So the disc digital program is hot. It was cool. Actually, Kaleidescape shared out my guide overview video on all their social media today. So that's cool. And people have been doing this more on the owners forums, and a little bit on ABS, some discussion, but primarily over the course of last week, I think more people are getting the firmware update, and there's been more discussion on the owners forums. So I've taken the occasion to try a couple of different things beyond what I had done with it in my first video. So I've got one video already done, edited. It's in the schedule, kind of in the can, coming for the next, within the next few weeks. Where I tried out some DVDs, I tried out some TV series, and I tried out the other studios, and I got a better idea of what some of the broader pricing and stuff is. And generally, it's pretty good, pretty sound, and along the same lines of what was in the original video. But people had been talking about using different drives as well, and I pretty much assumed, I think it was more or less to be expected, that you didn't necessarily have to buy a like approved drive, that like they didn't make it just work with the published list. It's more like the published list is what was tested and kind of like guaranteed. And I think there's some specific like customer support and technical reasons why the original list was what it is. But there had been people, a couple of other owners in that, commenting that, hey, I plugged in this drive, or I had this drive, I had a slim drive, and it worked. So I'm like, well, I might as well ride the same wave and try it out, because I did have this guy that I've had for a while. This is a slim drive, 4K capable Blu-ray. It's got the rollback firmware and stuff on it. This is the one I usually keep in my office if I do want to rip anything to my server or whatever. But the kicker is that, this has just the SATA, like the mini SATA connection, which with my laptop and my Mac, I generally just use with one cable. The mini SATA to USB-C, one cable. It provides all the powers the drive. And I've had no problem with it. Now, I have had like power problems with some external drives when I was just using USB-A. So if I show this cable, a lot of times when you have a mini SATA and a USB-A cable, the more rectangular one of these isn't enough, because there's like they carry a different voltage. USB-A carries different voltage levels than USB-C does. We can charge, full on charge, MacBooks big laptops, like with whatever 100 watts and stuff like that over those cables, these don't carry that. And I think ultimately, and I'm going into some conjecture here based on what I know about drives and computer tech and all of that. So I'm a little off of like Kaleidescape's recommendation, of course, but there's only so much power that a USB-A carries. So a lot of times what you'll see is a Y cable for an external drive. And sometimes drives might work just with one connection, just with bus power, or a lot of times you'll get two, one end of the drive and then two. So this would be expected. The white one would be expected to go into a USB charger, little charger brick, something like that. And then the blue one would be your data. That one goes into the host computer that the drive is connecting to. And I've got just a little this isn't even very powerful, probably 15 or 30 watt, maybe USB chargers. We just leave this usually plugged in our kitchen. My son charges all his robotic stuff and his remote control cars, and my wife charges her hand warmers, and all the miscellaneous household kind of charging stuff gets done on this. So long story short, I plugged this into the Kaleidescape first without the extra power connection, just because I was curious, to the drive, and the Kaleidescape powered it up, and I was able to catalog some discs just like that. However, I tried just a handful, maybe several discs at most with this methodology. And about halfway through, they kind of stopped cataloging. It would spin a little bit and it wasn't really doing anything or whatever. It's like, okay, maybe the K's USB port, is in fact not providing enough power to fully spin the mechanics of the drive and read it properly. And if you get some read errors or whatever in there, it's not going to catalog. So I plugged in the USB power part of it, and everything cataloged perfectly fine from there. So again, I never really expected that like the protocol of the Strato over USB would only talk to a specific subset of 4 drives. I fully expected it would talk to any kind of drive. It's generic USB protocol to a USB probably standardized specification into this type of storage. And so conceivably any storage would work, but it's really more about what you're connecting to it and how you're connecting it, and is it powered enough to spin the drive and read it. And when you get a bigger drive, a 5.25-inch drive, you're definitely not going to power a larger scale drive off of like bus power. And so that's why they have the external power bricks and all of that stuff. So this was pretty cool. So I actually pulled out my Asus. Like I had commented in my videos, I bought the recommended Asus drive right away. And I didn't even really need to do it. I could have just plugged this guy in day one. So I'm gonna return. It was only a week old. It came from Amazon. I'm just going to return that Asus drive back to Amazon. No reason to spend $130 on it.
Right.
When I already had this. And then if I do want to catalog something, I'll just bring this down and plug it in, and away you go. So just some extra feedback and guidance as we're kind of exploring the ins and outs of this program and how it works and all that stuff. So.
Yeah. It seems kind of a little convoluted or complicated in a way, like only specific things work, just from like you describing it, like you need specific drives. I think even Arturo said it seems very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't call it difficult. I mean, the thing about it is it's less about the published spec, put it that way, right? And I'm saying this as a product developer, somebody that works in software and engineering. When you make something, they're not going to test it with 1,000 drives.
Right.
They're going to qualify it with a specific subset of things. Maybe they'll try some different form factors, and from a quality engineering perspective, the feature was developed for a certain set of requirements. And I can understand why, like, you wouldn't necessarily want to rely on bus power drives. Again, I've had a lot of problems. It took me a couple drives to get to this one, trying to fully operate a bus power drive for ripping on my laptop. And a couple drives before this one, they just didn't work. They weren't reliable. And I think it was because of that power delivery, even on the ports of the laptop, like wouldn't sustain the spinning motor of the drive in the lasers and in the reading engine and stuff of the hardware. So, you know, I do that at work as well. We issue a product and we qualify it to work with certain pieces of hardware, and it may or may not work with, you know, everything in the device family, but there's only so much qualification that we do. We publish a recommended spec. You're going to use our product. This is what we test it with. You try something else beyond that, outside of the guidelines that we have, you know, specifically stated are guaranteed to work. And, you know, you may or may not find success. So the best thing, easiest thing to do is just stay in the recommendation, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, they can't realistically test every single external reader, writer, whatever drive out there. So, you know, the ones that kind of are on their white list of the ones that, you know, hey, just get this, you'll have a good experience.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, I mean, even Sony does that with their recommended, you know, NVMe drives that you can put in PlayStation 5. Yeah. Yep. So it's a similar thing to that. But it definitely sounds pretty neat. You know, I admittedly haven't gotten Kaleidescape. It's about this. I think we've talked about this numerous times, but it's about the price of my entire home theater to actually just get into the with a brand new Kaleidescape, to get into that ecosystem. And it's like, it doesn't kind of make sense to me at the moment, but very cool. Say hi to a couple people. We got Julius R in the house.
Yep. Julius, channel regular. Welcome.
Thanks for stopping by. I don't know why I went British there. Arturo, he already actually posted a couple things here. Let's see. Andre, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Nicholas actually has a couple questions that I've starred. We'll get to those here in a moment. One that I actually will talk about a little bit, which is kind of the little thing I want to touch on. But hello, Nicholas. And real quick, I'm actually just drinking iced coffee. It's not bourbon. Got to keep up with the late night live streams, you know. He also says that it does suck that the PS5 does not have authorized Atmos mixing in their games. I 100% agree with you. We really need something, even if it was DTSX, I think people would still be happy. You know, I think that man, the Atmos games that I've played, which are very few and far between, admittedly, but the few that I have that really stand out are like the Callisto Protocol, Plague Tale Requiem, was kind of a surprise to me in terms of like the overall Atmos track on that. For not only say the Atmos track, but the Atmos mix. The support for that was really, really cool. I remember birds flying over my head, like from the front of the soundstage all the way overhead, and I was like, wow, this is so cool.
They just dropped a firmware update today, I think. Sony did.
I saw that. Yeah, they're doing like 1440p with VRR support now. So that's really cool. That's really awesome. Finally, it only took them like 3 or 4 months to get that out. Although it's better than how long it took them to actually get 1440p out onto the PS5.
It took years. Yeah, buddy of mine just picked up a PSVR 2, but I haven't been over to his house yet to experiment with it. We'll see. Maybe I'll make some content with him at his place.
I'm on the fence because I get motion sickness, and I've heard some things about it that kind of depending on the game, it can give you motion sickness. But I'm really interested to see that OLED, the OLED screen, just to see the difference that it makes over the PSVR, which I don't have, but a friend does, and I've tried it. I've heard it's pretty great, just from the few videos I watched from Digital Foundry and minus Tech Tips. So, but yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit. I actually spent a good, I want to say 5 or 6 hours today doing a full manual audio calibration on my system, and I kind of wanted to just talk about that experience and why I did that. And Nicholas, I will actually talk a little bit about this right here. And I've never used ARC multi-sub calibration. However, I think that as good as all of these automated systems are, there's still room for a lot of error. That errors that you could potentially fix yourself just by doing stuff manually, which is part of the reason why I wanted to kind of test this out, get away from room correction, to see what I could do. And I honestly don't have any REW measurements right now to back all this up. I just went through today. I had a little bit of time to test some stuff out before I got busy doing something else. But yeah, so basically, one of the biggest things that's been happening recently is I really just I was finding the bass on my system a little too intense. And I know some people love bass. For me, I like a more balanced approach. I like clarity to the bass. I was finding that there was just a bit too much with the house curve that I had, which is like plus 10 dB between 20, like from, I don't know, 15 to 30 hertz, and then it slopes down to 75. So I was just I wanted to play around some different curves. There's a channel that I'd mentioned before called Obsessive Compulsive Audiophile. He's got a couple guides over there, and I basically followed them, or I kind of watched them, figured out the techniques. It's actually pretty simple once you get into it. Especially with, Room EQ Wizard's new stuff in their beta, like cross correlation. I think it's just called cross correlation, but basically it allows you to align different positions that you measure. Like say you measure your left front speaker in 6 different positions, it allows you to align them together. So when you average them for EQ, it makes sense. Like otherwise it's similar to what like Dirac and stuff does. But basically my whole goal was to run through, redo the mini DSP, put like a different, like a less aggressive house curve there, and also just do basically a curve over the whole system. And just using the graphic equalizer within the Denon receiver I have. Based on his video. And I basically went through the whole process of doing all the sub stuff and then time aligning all of these speakers together to the center channel, and then going through all the EQ process and stuff. I mean, a lot of it was pretty automated.
Okay.
Within REW, once you kind of figure it out, it's like a click of a button. He provides the files that you need in order to measure your Atmos speakers and stuff, which you can actually do, which is again why I wanted to give it a shot, because I was just curious to see how it sounded over like Odyssey, because I've always had this. I was actually just telling my wife about this. I've always had this issue with Odyssey in particular, where it's either too bright, it sounds too harsh on the high end, or it's muffled almost. Like their roll off is pretty crazy, and so I always tend to just put a curtain on my stuff and don't have anything. Basically, Odyssey doesn't touch anything over 500 hertz or 750 hertz, whatever. Yeah,
that's pretty low.
So yeah, and after doing this whole thing, and I just did a full correction. Again, this isn't like the first time I'm going to do this. It's not the last time I'm going to do this. So I'm going to definitely do it again and try some different things out probably at some point. But I was actually really impressed with the depth and the clarity that I got with everything. And it was pretty crazy to see the before and after measurements. Like one was with Odyssey and one was doing the full manual thing. And how like almost like to the dot, it tracked the house curve slope from like 20 hertz all the way up to like 17,000 hertz. Nice. It was pretty like spot on. I was really, and this is just using like the 9-band graphic equalizer on each channel.
Okay, so I was just going to ask, so what's the process where you were doing your setting, like specific like PEQ points and, basically Q values and boosting and trimming and in creating a level?
Well, actually, so what really made it easy was he provided this template basically for the new EQ filters within the new beta of Room EQ Wizard. So essentially you just hit a button that optimizes the gains and it fills all that in for you. And then you just go in and you put it into your receiver, which I was just like, oh, now the downside is, depending on how many channels you have, this can be a pretty lengthy process. I only have 7 total channels plus my subs. And like that took 5 to 6 hours. I measured multiple points. I measured, I think, normally I do 8 with Odyssey. I just measured like 6. I did like the center, the left, the right, and then like in front of that, just in case we're kind of moving around. and did all the cross correlation, the vector average. It's a lot. I don't know
Cool.
if it's something that I'll make a video on anytime soon, just because his tutorials are actually really, really good.
Hmm.
I didn't
But you
have
can
any
still
like,
comment on your experience, do some cliff notes maybe.
yeah, I think that like point people over to his channel, because I had no problem following his tutorials. They were really, I think I followed like 3 of them, and they were really, I mean, they were really easy to follow, and the results were like pretty crazy. I mean, I don't think that it would. I mean, I've never really heard Trinov, but we're talking about like a $16,000 or $32,000 processor
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, does the spatial stuff. I don't think this is going to compete with that, maybe, but I've never heard Odyssey or Dirac do what I did today and have the outcome like well, I was watching clip after clip because I was just like, am I hearing this right? Like, is this placebo? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me look at the measurements again, because like I swear like this sounds like the best my system has ever sounded in my room, and that says a lot. So
yeah, well, there's got to be something to the individualizing the equalization. You're really making it specific to your space rather than an algorithm that's kind of generically coded to handle a lot of spaces doing the best it can with something. There were probably elements of the system, edge case pieces or whatever, right, that you were able to accommodate very specifically that an algorithm or something else might have glossed over or maybe not handled in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, it was more of almost like an experiment that I've wanted to try for a while, and I just had some time today to do it, because I knew once I sat down, it was going to take a while. It wasn't going to be like, I was kind of honestly dreading it in a way, because it takes time away from like me being able to do anything else. You literally just have to sit there and look at a screen. Okay, you know, we move the mic, take a measurement, and do all this stuff. And I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, that's the thing, is once I get into it, I really do enjoy it. And I'm like, you know, I think like maybe this is something that I could help people with, or offer it as a service to people at some point, if they don't want to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, I was really curious, and my curiosity was met with excitement. Now I want to go watch more clips after we're done here.
Nice. So were you using like the Odyssey app thing to get more specific, or were you able to do what you needed to do just on screen
prior to this, or within this?
with what you did today?
Odyssey's completely turned off.
Okay.
Like Odyssey has no
So how do you get the data? So you mentioned like having REW like calculate and present things for you, and then entering them in to the receiver. I guess then you were able to do that on the receiver's menus directly.
Yeah, actually, I was using the web interface on the receiver. So it like basically when you feed it, like the graphic equalizer on Denon and Marantz are pretty like finicky. Like basically you have to feed it an audio signal for it to even populate or show up. So like it was a lot of like, oh, it's grayed out. Okay, let me play a signal, and then you know, go in and just refresh it on my browser, and then it would pop up. And I honestly didn't even know that it was there until I watched this video like, I don't know, a month or so ago. I was like, wait a minute, what? I thought, and this is just my brain because I hadn't accessed that in a while. I thought it was just you could only EQ channel pairs. You know, I was like, I remember I had an Onkyo that would only allow you to do that. And as soon as I saw this, I'm like, that was my old Onkyo. Like that wasn't this. So you can literally do, you know, front left, center, front right, surround left, like basically whatever you have your amplifier configured for, or the amp configuration, you can do it. They don't have a sub EQ, which I thought was kind of strange, but maybe I'm like missing it, or maybe it's only when you have 2 plugged in or something. I don't know. I didn't really need it because I have the mini DSP. So yeah, it was. I'm still like kind of excited to like go watch a movie now.
Cool. Yeah, it's fun tweaking stuff up and going to see the fruits of the labor and look for those differences and improvements.
Yeah. It makes me definitely curious, like in the future, getting something like an external parametric EQ instead of, you know, that way having far more control, because you only have 9 bands on the graphic equalizer per channel. So you're really limited by the amount of filters that you can apply, like
Mhm.
the limitations of the Denon itself.
Yep.
You know, I know something like maybe XT32, one of those Odyssey variations, might do a better job than the XT that I have.
Hmm.
So, you know, there's that too. I don't have the XT32 to compare it. That actually would be a pretty cool comparison to kind of see, you know, what the
Yeah.
difference is.
What
This
else
would just,
opens up?
yeah, this just basically allows you full manual control on, like, you want a different house curve, you don't want a house curve,
Hmm.
you don't have to rely on Odyssey or have to download a $20 app to
Hmm.
go and do it. Granted, you have to have a, you know, a measurement microphone and all this stuff to
Yeah.
do it. So, I mean, there is a cost there and there's a time commitment. And I think some people are into that and some people aren't, which is totally like understandable. I'm kind of, I don't know. Once I go all in on something, I'm like, oh, all right, let's just go the full manual route. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
So to get the gist of it, you had new versions, new capabilities in REW, let you
Mhm.
measure multi-point around the room and run through new algorithms, and then using the information from the other channel, basically taught you how to translate that data into the
Yeah,
settings of the receiver. Is kind of the high level of
yeah,
it.
pretty much, pretty much. It was I mean, there was a couple of new features in REW that really made that possible. The
Mm.
cross correlation feature, I think, is still only in the most recent beta. I could be wrong on that, but that really just kind of makes it easier to do these multi-point measurements across your seating area, so you can get, you know, if you have a smaller area, there's less likely a chance
Yeah.
that you may even need to measure that many points. Like if you just, like, honestly, I
Mhm.
probably didn't need to measure 6 points. I probably could have gotten away with 3. But I did the same thing for the subwoofers as well. So I measured all 6 data points and used those like with cross correlation
Yep.
to time align everything, and that way it's just smoother within that. It actually changed the base in a way that I didn't expect. Like it's
Mm.
more full. It was actually allowed me to lower my crossovers too, because everything was kind of EQ'd in tandem. You know, you EQ the subwoofer separately, but it's still retaining the house curve that you're setting overall for all channels. You know, it starts here and then the whole thing slopes down, you know, to 20 hertz or 20 kilohertz. Sorry.
I haven't really used REW at all. So before this feature, would you just base it? Would you have done the same process on just a 1 point measurement, or would it have been a more involved and arduous process to try to record multiple points and then arrive at the same information a little more manually?
I mean, I never really did multi-point stuff
Okay,
because it was kind of a pain in the butt.
got it.
You know, when you're trying to vector average those points, they really do need to be, like, you know, they need to be aligned in order for
Hmm.
it to be accurate enough.
Hmm.
So, and you couldn't do that prior to this cross correlation. Maybe you could have, but like
Okay.
I never
Yeah.
really got that deep. And then since this is like a new free feature, I'm like, oh yeah, it was kind of like when the alignment tool first came out. I was like, oh my, this is a godsend. Thank you so much. So
Yeah. I definitely I've got a wider seating range, so I definitely try to multi-point around in
yeah,
my spaces, focusing the bubble around a certain area that I would generally tend to sit in, and then go a little further out to the wings a little bit. But
yeah. I think, you know, for a lot of people, you know, their main listening position is like their focal point, because
mhm,
typically the people that are sitting on the left or the right or behind, they're not really too concerned
yeah,
you know, the sound quality. They're going to think it sounds awesome
right,
regardless. They're not going to know, oh,
yep,
like, oh, there's a massive knoll on the right side, you know. Probably not
yeah,
going to pick up on that.
no, yeah. We do this stuff for ourselves primarily, for sure.
Yeah. Go down that rabbit hole, man. I'm going far. I'm going far.
So does that experience? So what's next then? Maybe iterate a little bit more. Just try to hone your expertise, or do you think, does that lead to any change or
I mean, the only
further
change that
tweaking?
would really lead to, I think, is getting a receiver that has pre-outs, which would allow me to then add an external parametric EQ or something. You
Okay.
know, that would be kind of like seeing how this worked essentially, and then kind of going to that next step of like, oh, well, if I'm already here, well, then the parametric EQ is kind of like the next step up. like being able to have much more control over a wider frequency range. You know, but then you're kind of getting into, I mean, that won't be anytime soon. I don't even have a receiver that has pre-outs. So, you know, I would be curious to see like other receivers, like what they do. I actually have somebody I'm going to help on Friday who may be interested in a manual calibration. So that would be interesting to kind of see his reaction. Because he has ran Odyssey and is not happy with it. So we could do some measurements and I can see like what's going on in his room and his system. But yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about it before, but like one of the biggest things that really helped here is, and I think ARC does this pretty well, is the actual alignment of the speakers to the main listening position.
Yep.
So like in terms of like time alignment, like distance.
Yep.
So like Odyssey, like both XT and XT32, typically they don't do a really good job of kind of aligning everything together. Like you know, like my front left and front right were about, I don't know, 30, what am I saying there? About 15 milliseconds off total between the center, which I measured as kind of the reference. So like I physically measured that from the center, the center speaker to the main listening position and the mic where the microphone was set up. So I knew that was a known constant. And I use that as my reference speaker for the whole thing. So everything is kind of time aligned around the center speaker.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's definitely, I imagine there's some value to be had in going the manual route on top of Odyssey and on top of, you know, a receiver or whatever that has you know, less filters or a little less power, making sure that you're honing all of its capability specific to the space.
Yeah. And then you're also, you know, obviously limited by your speakers as well. So like if, you know, I'm running entry level speakers, and honestly, at some point I do want to upgrade those because they're entry level. You know, I want to get, yeah. But you know, the techniques and stuff I'm learning now, I feel, you know, will definitely transfer over to getting a higher quality speaker. So
nice.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's kind of what I've been doing today. And yeah, I do, like you said, want to do a video maybe about just talking about my experience. I'd love to be able to actually get, you know, obsessive compulsive audiophile kind of involved with that, because people look at me and they're like, wow, Brad knows his stuff. I don't. Looking at this guy, it's like he's on another level.
There's always somebody on another level.
Yeah, he's talking about stuff. I'm like, okay, let me look this up, because I don't know what he just said, you know.
Yep.
So it's pretty funny, but you know, that just kind of goes to show you that you always have something to learn somewhere.
Yep.
And
yeah, it's
exciting. I always like learning new stuff, and you know, who knows if I one day make a tutorial about this and help more people, you know, that would be amazing. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Super cool.
Should we roll through some of the questions?
Yeah, for sure. You wanna kick us off? I'll kind of star anyone, any other ones here that
we're on topic here. Nicholas Ruminos says, "Why is Mini DSP still better performance than ARC multi-sub calibration?" By ARC, I'm assuming he means Anthem. I don't, Nicholas. I don't know if you have a little more back, or if there was a couple other comments leading up to that. I think that may be more a matter of, you know, what you put into it, or, you know, what your specific configuration is, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of talked a little bit about that just now, but I think, yeah, it just comes down to like the algorithm that these room EQ, I can't even talk, the room correction software, like that they use. Some of, I mean, you can really mess things up if you don't set the mic up correctly. You know, how many, I can't tell you how many times that I've had friends say, oh yeah, I just put it on like a stack of books. It's like, that's not, you're not really doing yourself any benefit here. You're like, I was holding it with my hand. It's like, again, you know, like you really need to put the time in to get the best out of it. And I understand, like, just some people just don't want to do it. And that's because it can get confusing, you know, especially when they go online and they read about like, oh, well, You know, my receiver always sets my crossovers wrong when I run room correction,
Mhm.
you know, or something like that. They set them too low normally.
I think if you're going to use room, and so I'm speaking a little biased for myself because we're kind of not opposing, but we're kind of doing different things right now, right? You're feeling very good and very positive about the experience of diving into the kind of the full on manual mode,
Yeah.
and I'm over here like feeling like I run ARC and I'm good.
Yeah.
So like to Nicholas's question, I don't think that mini DSP is necessarily better. I think that statement is a very large. It depends. But you know, if you're going to use an auto system, I think it's very good to use an auto system that you understand. One that that you've developed some expertise and you have some knowledge about how to work with it. You can help ensure that it doesn't do something squirrely, right, and get the most
Yeah.
out of it. But I've been personally really happy with the ARC results, and so it depends. I guess it depends. Julie's asking, I've got a PS5, bought the Samsung 1 gig memory. States for ultimate speed, I need to update the firmware. Will the updated firmware really show noticeable speed on my PS5? I always go ahead.
No, I'm trying to think. Is he talking about the firmware for the Samsung drive or
Yeah,
the
I'm guessing that's
PS5?
the firmware on the Samsung drive itself.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
these SSDs nowadays have their own updaters.
Yep. Yep.
I know on my gaming PC, I have it's an Western Digital Black SN850.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I've had that running. I bought that because at the time I've got a 2 terabyte version. I bought that some years ago, and it was like it was at the top of a lot of the review ranks as like basically the fastest gaming drive, and it had a gaming mode and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been in that PC for a few years, and I'd say it probably gets like a firmware update maybe once a year, maybe
Oh,
twice
wow.
a year. That there's been an update. I don't think those updates are imperative as like a video driver, GPU
Yeah. Yeah.
driver, or a Windows system driver and all of that, but you still never know. I mean, it's software, right? And if, and I'll say this again, as somebody that's like in industry writing software, um, we find performance regressions in our code and we fix them. And if we, as a software developer managing a product, if we fixed something that increased performance enough that we put it in a release note and told you about it, you probably want to go ahead and update it because we probably feel pretty good about the fact that we're saying that to you. But it's the reality of what the measurable performance might be is kind of a guess. That's the one challenge of consoles as well, because you can't update that drive in the PS5.
Right. You have to plug it into the computer first too.
So it's
I don't even know. Can you
task.
even do that over like a USB external enclosure? Or with it
Probably.
like an M2, do you need to actually? Does it need to be on the motherboard
Yeah.
to
I don't think
actually
so. I think as long as as long as the operating system was able to see it through some kind of a drive interface. But if I don't know if they make like an M dot, get a little cheap M.2 to USB, because speed doesn't matter. You just need to have Windows see the
Right.
drive and storage manager,
Yeah.
and then be able to run whatever Samsung utility will update the firmware. I would say if you have to jump through way too many hoops, you don't have a PC to begin with, and then I would just use it and I wouldn't sweat it.
Yeah.
But if you have an easy way to do it, hopefully you do it once and you never really have to do it again. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I haven't upgraded the storage in my PS5, but I do know that it will tell you, like, isn't there a way like when you first install it, it will tell you the speed at which it's operating at, or I know it'll tell you if it's not fast enough. Like if it's like, oh, this is under, I think it's a minimum 5,000 megabytes, megabyte, I can't remember, but or gigabyte, I don't know. But yeah, it's 5,000 read and write, and if it doesn't meet that, then it will tell you, kind of be like, hey, you can store games on here, but you may have a bad experience if you try to play games off of this drive. Most of the time, I honestly think that you'd be okay. I mean, especially if it's
Yeah.
a Samsung drive that's rated at like 7,000 or something like that, then you're
Yeah.
probably good to just stick it in the PS5 and have a
Got
good
some headroom.
experience with that.
So that's where it might have been nice, if if Sony's going to publish a specific recommended list of drives from specific manufacturers.
Yeah.
This is something that I think these console makers have to kind of keep in mind a bit. That maybe it would have been nice to be able to upgrade the firmware of the drive through the PlayStation OS via some specific engineering collaboration. I wonder if the Microsoft, the Xbox Series X, they have their own specific cards. I presume that the Xbox OS is able to just silently in the background plug it in, do it sometime you're not playing a game, that they can fix bugs and issue fixes to that. That's almost kind of like a superior benefit of it being a little more closed versus taking a third party thing and plugging it in like that.
I'm still amazed that in this day and age we get like constant controller firmware updates on like the PS5 and the Xbox and even the Switch. Like I turned on my Switch the other day, or our Switch, like for the first time in a while, and I was like, oh wait, they have an update for the dock too. Like this is great. Like
software everywhere, and it all ships buggy.
Yeah, true.
Or has regressions later on. Mr. Toodaloo. Hi, Jeremy. Does the G2 OLED have an anti-reflective coating? I think the G3 does. I tried to Google this on the side actually because I don't know. I see a bunch of references to LG OLED anti-reflective coatings. Do you know?
I do not. I know off the top of my head. No, I know that I don't think the G2 does, because it's kind of like a mirror, right? Although
it's pretty mirrorific.
Yeah. It's got like, if you look at it for like, if you walk, does it have kind of like that weird, like it's not completely like glass, like it kind of has like almost like a slight texture to it, like a waviness. Yeah. Freaked me out the first time because my C1 didn't come with a like the screen, the peel on it for some reason. And
was this returned or something?
I thought, and then I looked at the hour counter in the service menu and it was like 0 hours. So I had read that some of them don't even have the plastic sticker on the front of it anymore, which is, I was like sad. I was like, man, I wanted that satisfaction, that sound.
Yeah. I put up a couple of videos of the film peel. It's like the final step. I wonder if it's like, that's a plastic thing, right? They don't do it for save the environment or whatever.
Right.
I'd recommend, if you're curious about specifically G2 room reflection, I have a couple videos on the channel where I walked around the room day and night, lights on, sunlight, all that stuff, and kind of showed it off, screen on, screen off. So if you wanted to get an idea of that, that's up on my channel. Chadman asking, what products have you found work best with Control 4? What do you use most on a daily basis, such as routines and smart devices? So my Control 4 setup is almost entirely Control 4 based, sourced from Dan, the dealer that I've had on the channel a bunch. So I have the Control 4 controller. My light switches are Control 4, and ceiling fans, we have some of them on Control 4. Those are Control 4 switches. The multi touch switches that we use, like they have 6 configurable buttons on them. Those are all Control 4 brand. Motion sensors. Some of the other stuff I think is just like maybe a couple of whatever generic things that Dan had recommended, because we have some motion sensors around the house. We have a couple of like contact relays that are for our garage doors, because those are on the system as well. The fireplace switch is a Control 4, I believe, specific Control 4 made switch. So I've generally just stuck with that, stuck on brand, or a lot of times, because like Snap AV, they're all kind of interrelated in the background. Many Control 4 dealers, if you need little bitty automation components, there'll be something under the Snap banner, which is again kind of part of the same thing.
Yeah.
the big one that I'd like to add is cameras. But I don't know what I would choose yet for those. One of the other ABS Forum Michigan guys that I had on the channel, Kevin, I did a tour of his theater. Actually, Dan just put in a bunch of cameras in his place. I'm kind of almost want to go over there and check it all out, because at some point soon, I don't know if it'll be this year, but next year, I really want to get cameras around my house. But I don't know that I don't think Control 4 makes branded cameras, but it might still be something under the Snap banner. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of I have an Ecobee thermostat. I mention that, but actually for the longest time, which is kind of a bit of a pain, my thermostat hasn't been on the Control 4 system. And it's because we have a complex HVAC system. We've got a geothermal setup in the house. And so it's a different kind of, there's like a heat pump, and it's a different kind of control mechanism that when you buy a thermostat, it has to be able to, most thermostats, like go by a Nest or whatever, it's made to control a traditional gas furnace, and they don't necessarily have the ability to manage heat pumps and stuff like that. So
yeah,
so it's complex because of that. And then we have separate like HEPA filter, and we have a dehumidifier and a humidifier. And so a lot of thermostats, even smart thermostats, they'll like control two things, meaning they'll control your furnace and they'll control like one accessory. But we have the furnace and 3 accessories.
Yeah.
So I've got this old Ecobee. Unfortunately, I'd very much like to upgrade it to a newer model, but I've like gone and done the research a little bit. It's like, okay, where can I find a smart thermostat that's Control 4 capable, and has all of the right things? And then I get frustrated that I just can't readily find what seems to be a good replacement model, and just give up on it. Yeah. And then our security system is, I don't know what it is. And honestly, it's not Control 4, but it's a third party. So
yeah. I just got something I'm really excited about that I could like wire my lights into. It's called the Clapper. Have you ever heard of this? So basically you just clap. No, I'm just kidding. No, I've actually been looking at a smart thermostat. We have just like the Amazon. I don't even want to say the name, just in case anybody's watching with speakers on, I trigger it. But yeah, we just have the Amazon thermostat, and it's fine because we got it for super cheap. But I want something that allows, like, we don't even have like dampers, so like we don't even have like zones. But I want something that I can have just a smart sensor in the theater room, because it does get a bit warm in there. So even if it cools down the rest of the house a little bit more, if it keeps that room at like 76, 77 degrees instead of 78, 79, which is it's still comfortable for me, but it can get a little warm. So I'm kind of looking at the Honeywell stuff. Basically, a lot of the Amazon thermostat that we have already has the same wiring as like some of these like Honeywell like smart thermostats that are sensor capable. So I'm just kind of looking at maybe just spending $150 and on Amazon. If it doesn't work, just send it back or whatever. So, but yeah, we don't have being in Florida, we don't have like furnaces or anything like that. So it's all like heat pump and emergency heat pumps and stuff. So yeah, so much fun.
Yep. And Chadman's local. He's local to me in Michigan here. He's actually been working with Dan on his theater. So to kind of answer your question a little more personally as well, I would say, Dan, if Dan's doing your Control 4 stuff, he's going to source elements from Snap, but I just trust him because he's going to pick the stuff that's going to work, well together based on his experience. Right. Arturo Trevino, how many streams are you taking control?
I feel like I'm on a lot of streams lately. I don't know. Hey, I do want to say real quick, this weekend, for anybody that's watching that wants to hang out a little bit, I will be doing a live stream this weekend celebrating 15,000 subscribers. I just hit 15,000. So awesome. Yeah, that's super, super exciting. Another milestone hit. I actually was looking at like my subscriber count from the same time last year, and it was like 5,000. I was like, how did I go up 10 in a year? So thank you everyone that's like stuck with me and stuff. So if you want to hang out, we're just going to be like just chilling. I think my wife and I are just going to be on stream talking about stuff, and I'm going to pick her brain, maybe quiz her a little bit and see what she knows, see if she's learned anything over the years.
You're giving away like an 83-inch G3 too, right? Or no?
Hey, whoa, no.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, LG has not returned my calls.
Freaking LG.
They were like, "Oh, we thought you said 50,000." I was like, "No, 15."
Cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Super congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Daraj B, he has a dedicated theater room, Sony 295 ES projector, projecting at a screen size of 165 inches, unspecified if that is scope or 16 by 9. That'd be a big 16 by 9 though, so I'm going to assume scope. Screen gain is 1.1. Movies in HBR is quite dark. Any solution to make it better? I don't know what the rated lumens. Let's see, I don't know if I can find this quick enough. What are the rated lumens of a Sony 295 ES? And if you can pop in the comments as well, there is that 165 scope or 165 16:9. Oh, this is 1500 lumens. Yeah. What is it? What is my NX7? 1900. Yeah, I think you just ultimately need some more lumens. Let's spend some money on a new projector. 16:9. Okay, yeah, that's big. That's big. My equivalent 16:9 diagonal is 133, and I thought 150 16:9 made for a large screen in my space. Whoa. I could imagine 165. Yeah, that's a big screen. you need a brighter projector, or maybe a much higher gain screen perhaps as well. That brings its own challenges and stuff in. I guess other solutions might be, depending on how far back you sit or whatever, you might be able to zoom down a little bit, mask some of that away. But yeah, there's really not a whole lot of ways to create brightness. I think other than that, we've got a very similar, I'm going to skip over one question to pop this other one up because it's related to the same thing.
Yeah.
From Jed asking if I find my JV7 bright enough. So I've had a number of folks asking me lately, and actually I did a call with somebody on the channel that I was doing. It was actually a second kind of like consulting call, helping to give him advice on his theater build and all of that stuff. And he was been posting on some forums about intended screen sizes and certain projector choices and brightness, and being really concerned about brightness. But I have a lot of people that have mentioned to me, like, yeah, 163-inch scope screen and an NX7, like that's not enough brightness for that size of a screen. Isn't it too dim? Isn't it too dark? And my answer to that is, like, I don't think I would push it much more than that. And I do look forward maybe someday to having, an NZ8 or an NZ9 and get a 2500, 3000 lumen projector instead of a 1900. The NX7 is rated at 1900. But I had an LS 12,000, which I always think is rated higher than it is. Absent LS 12,000 is rated at 2700 lumens, and so right there, what is that, 50% brighter than the NX7? And then it was a new LS 12,000 compared to my half-life bulb sitting in my NX7. So easily measuring, I think, Andy Pixel Pusher on AVS, when he was over, I think that Epson was throwing twice the brightness or more perhaps than the NX7. Wow. And, over the course of a couple of days, he came over twice. And then we had a couple other guys come over on the 2 nights that we were playing around. So take it for what it's worth. But amongst 5 total opinions, everybody chose the NX7 as the preferable projector over the Epson. So brightness alone did not the best experience in picture quality, image quality, fidelity create. In certain scenes you could notice that brightness, and I wouldn't turn it down. If I could turn a crank and pull another 1,000 lumens out of the projector, I would do it.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that. Black levels, tone mapping, other picture processing things made more of a difference in the overall fidelity of the image. And even side by side, half screen, blocking half the lenses on both of them and seeing them immediately side by side, you could see that brightness. We watched like Aquaman, the Italy, I think is in Italy battle, where they're outside fighting the Atlanteans, super bright middle of the day battle, and the Epson does the larger brightness does some work, but it's not everything. And I don't think I have an inferior projection experience with my size of screen and that projector. I'll be happy to upgrade it, but until that day, I'm not wanting or to feel it's inferior. Arturo Trevino, another question: why can't today's consoles go past 7.1 audio? Yeah, we were talking about this a little earlier.
Yeah, I mean even Dolby Atmos support is in DTSX support on the PlayStation side is just very few and far between. I think there is I don't know if it's a technical limitation, but like technically PCM can't go over 7.1. Well, I mean, within the confines of like what we have in terms of like what can be on movies and games and stuff. So like that's the limitation with that. It may be an imposed limitation. We could potentially go like more than that. Same with like how optical caps out at like 2-channel when technically it has enough bandwidth to do, I think, like 5-channel or something like that. So yeah, I think there just needs to be a push. And I think someone mentioned in the comments, said likely, Martin, oh, my mouse is dying. Martin says, likely because 99.99% of console and PC users don't have more than 7 speakers. Xbox can do Atmos, but hardly any game has native. And he has a point. And honestly, a lot of gamers play with headphones. I think probably more like we're kind of in the minority. Like we're not a lot of people are into home theater, unfortunately. Like I was actually just having this conversation with somebody yesterday about it. It's like, how many people outside of yourself and like maybe some close friends that you met because of home theater have home theaters, So it's like, it's becoming far more common now, but it's like a few years ago, it was 10 years ago or so, it was scarcer than it is now. But a lot of people just are using their TV speakers too. It's like crazy. So
I'm technically speaking, I'm gaming in 2.2. I don't game in surround sound now because I don't game in the
you
theater.
Gotta leave. Get out of here. The living room. Get out of here. You can't.
But I game for the video, not for the audio that I have is still awesome. It's awesome for 2.2.
Yeah.
Don't have surround.
Yeah. I know Eddie just said optical maxes out at 5.1 Dolby Digital. Yes, it does. But it actually has, theoretically, it has enough bandwidth to do uncompressed. I remember researching this for a video a long time ago. But it has the technical bandwidth, but there's like a cap on it, from my understanding. So I can't remember where I read that. If I remember, I'll link the article after the live stream goes up. But it does cap out at 5.1 Dolby Digital and DTS. It can do DTS at like 1.5 megabytes per second, which is more than the 768 that Dolby Digital has. And I think it can do. I can't remember if it can do Dolby Digital Plus or not. But you don't really see Dolby Digital Plus advertised much anymore. That was back in the HD DVD days. I don't know if anybody here remembers that. Still got my Toshiba HDA1 out in the garage.
I think I had I don't think I ever bought the HD DVD Blu-ray or the HD DVD drive for the Xbox. I don't think I ever had an HD DVD.
I have that too. It barely reads discs anymore. I have like 35 HD DVDs. So I only keep them around because some of them for a while never made it to Blu-ray, or if they did, the transfer was pretty bad. Like they just noise reduced the crap out of stuff. And so I kept them around, and I had ripped them at one point to external drive, and then I dropped the drive. Just all of that. Yeah, it was like, okay. Yeah. Dude, I spent like a week ripping like those 35 discs. It took so long. But yeah, that was the good old days, back when they had the flippers. The one side was a DVD, the other side was a HD DVD. That was their whole like.
There was a lot of reasons why HD DVD was this, like beta versus VHS, right? The losing technology was in some ways the better designed or maybe preferable technology, but the opponent won the war. So that's the way it went.
Well, let's see. Arturo says that anyone dreams of 12K today. I don't even know what that is. A 12K resolution? I need more
No,
specifics, Arturo.
I don't know if he typed that when we were talking. I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what the context is.
Yeah, 12K. Yeah, I don't even think we need 8K. I don't even think that's needed for most people.
Mm-mm.
Let's see. YouTube Someday One asks, I have an AVM70 with a mini DSP SHD that controls 4 BB2000 Pros. My question, how would you recommend adding additional subs? I do have an extra mini DSP on hand. Thanks, guys. Does the AVM70 have dual sub outs
It
or
does. It is.
multiple?
Yeah, it is 2 discrete.
Okay, so yeah, you could literally hook up another mini DSP to that second output, and go that route. I would make sure that both the level and the distance setting is the exact same between the two. Um, like the two outputs. So you basically would use one mini DSP to control these 4 subs, and then
Mm.
this other mini DSP to control these other 2. It would definitely be a lot more work because you'd have to remember which subs are hooked up to which, and then access that. But I mean, it's possible. I mean, you could also daisy chain them together, like by going like output or like
Mm.
out 4 from like mini DSP 1 to I'm referring to the 2x4 HD, which is what I have. I'm not too familiar with the SHD, but you could technically daisy chain it. So if you wanted, say, 6 subs, you wouldn't technically need that 4th output on the first one. So you could go out to an input, but you're kind of making it a little more difficult when you just have that second sub out on the AVM70.
Mm.
So you could just use that. That's what I would recommend. That would kind of make it a little easier.
Cool.
So,
Well, one of the things, so the other topic that we had, I can chat a little bit on. Well, we can let some more questions queue up.
yeah,
Is
I'm
the
trying to hide
Lumagen.
this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm trying to hide this. My
Oh,
mouse is
no
being
problem.
all weird right now.
I can grab it.
There you. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So while Brad was painstakingly experimenting with the finer details of his audio, I was doing the same on the video side. So Sunday after the live, right after the live stream, actually, the little just kind of like channel little hangout thing I did on Sunday, Chris Deering texted me. He's like, "Hey, you want to set that Lumagen up?" I'm like, "Sure."
Absolutely.
So it was interesting. So we spent probably 3-4 hours on the phone. I think I kind of almost shirked some of the family responsibility for the day. But it all worked out fine. So I think we were online from about 3 o'clock until about 6 o'clock. And so I'll chat about it a little bit here for a while, because I think there's some interesting initial thoughts. But I'll say as well, like we're hopefully planning next Wednesday to do a stream with Chris, and we'll really go deep on the Lumagen, and he can speak in his own words about things that he did in terms of the configuration and how he uses these, how he uses these in different systems and all of that. But I definitely learned a lot. So I know I had been questioning, definitely not like knocking it or running it down in any way. I think the concept of like, what does a video processor do in a home theater setup, in a projection setup, Lumagen, a Mad VR? Do I really need it? And what does it do? And what does it do if you don't have a lens and things like that? So props to the super chat.
Yeah, thank you. You too, Someday One. Thank you so much. Definitely appreciate it.
So Chris had spent some time ahead of us we got basically on a video call, and it was pretty neat. He was able to basically build a configuration file for the Lumagen. So the way the Lumagen works is you have all the menu system and everything, right, where you can kind of manually tweak on it. But you can also like upload and offload configuration files. And so he's like an ACE Lumagen specific calibrator, and so he's got like base configs set for different kind of setups, and so gave him some constraints about my screen and its size and my projector, and he kind of put together a baseline. And so we had to do some updating, and that was kind of interesting. I think one of the things Lumagen gets knocked a little bit as being like a little old, a little archaic, I guess, in some of its technology. There's no Ethernet port, there's no web UI, there's no kind of nice whiz bang interface and ease of access and all that. So it was like, I needed a USB cable, and it needed to show up like in Windows. I had to use the Windows VM on my Mac in order to like, you know, have this thing basically do a UART over USB and show up on a COM port, so we could run a little like, you know, real old school looking utility to update to the latest firmware, and then drop the config file down. And we didn't have to jump through too many hoops. They had good published documentation to do that. So that took a little bit though. We got that all set up. So the unit was updated to the latest software, which actually has the like immediate auto aspect ratio adjustment control in some of that. And then we proceeded to kind of sit and tweak for a little while on the settings. And I think I definitely realized a few things, I guess. And so it was pretty neat because I've got kind of a little bit of a compromised space, right? I don't have enough throw distance from my projector to my screen to fill the screen size that I bought. I got a 163-inch scope screen, and I project something like 17 feet back, and my NX7 is borderline against the wall as it is. So I can't get any further throw distance in order to create a full 163-inch scope image. So generally speaking, I zoom as much as I can to fill as much as I can. And then there's like a lens mode in the installation memory settings of the JVC where you can say zoom to the full width, because the JVC panel is 4,096 pixels wide, right? And 4K is 3840 wide. So you zoom it up, and then that expands your image horizontally when it's ultra widescreen, and it also expands it in ratio vertically. And I can come within, you know, 5 or so diagonal inches of filling my screen that way. And the projector does the scaling and all that stuff. But with the Lumagen and Chris's setup, what we were kind of able to define was scaling modes for the Lumagen that basically says, you know, treat things natively, scale them natively to 4096, and more or less treat my setup like a 2.2 aspect ratio screen, so that we could always maximize the height, and then, you know, constant image height. And then based on the content, the wider the content, the more out to the sides it would fill on the screen. So 16:9 fills in there, 185 goes a little wider, 2.0 goes a little wider, you know, out to 2.2 and 2.35. And it's pretty cool because, you know, I couldn't fill even with the zooming in and that lens zoom mode set, I still had like, I don't know, a good few inches or more of vertical space not being used. And there's pixels there, right? Because you're zooming the projector in and you're pushing pixels off the screen above and below. But with a little bit of stretch and a little bit of the different kind of things that the Lumagen can do, I was able to completely fill my screen vertically with any source images of any aspect ratio, all automatic, right? No grabbing the remote or triggering a lens memory shift or change in all of that. And it just, you know, pushes things out or pushes things in. I haven't really played with the nonlinear stretch stuff yet. I kind of think that I'm not like a big fan of stretching content. I'm a little bit more of a purist. Although, again, in this case, we did actually opt to stretch, to always make sure the screen is filled top to bottom. And if it's 16:9 or 185:1, once you get past like the 2.2 aspect ratio, then the Lumagen is actually stretching just a little bit, just a couple inches worth of stretch. But you're stretching a couple inches of like whatever, a 45 or 40-inch.
It's not really going to be that noticeable.
It's not noticeable, but it is impactfully noticeable that the whole screen is
filled. You're not taking like, you know, content that was 4:3 or whatnot, and trying to make it. I'm definitely with you there. We've had many discussions, a friend of mine and I, about nonlinear stretch, and I'm like, it's cool. I'll give it that, but like, I know myself, and I don't. I'm far more of a purist than I think most people are, and I don't think I could do it. I think I would play around with it to check it out, but I don't think that I could.
I agree.
That's just that's my preference. I'm not saying it's bad. So If you're out there and are offended by that, I'm sorry.
Hey, everybody does it their own way, but
True,
yeah,
true.
I think we're in the same boat on that.
Yeah.
But having then down to the processor, this is all set, right? All these modes are set. The processor is constantly analyzing the signal that's being fed to it and adjusting, scaling, and the image in the field of its output, that the projector doesn't need to do anything but just natively throw up, right? Throw up onto the screen whatever the Lumagen is sending it. Everything is instantaneous. And and I don't have to mess with stuff. I was really starting to like it. Sunday night, and then Monday night I got down here a little bit, played around, and it's pretty cool. And all those movies that have the shifting aspect ratios, like a Top Gun, would only basically pop a little wider and then a little tighter, but it would always be filling where you're looking in the center of the screen, so a little less annoying, and still kind of doable. So I was really digging it, and then you get the other benefits, like, if you're using an Apple TV, you're playing content and you swipe up or you pause, all of the controls now on the Apple TV default player UI, they're on the bottom. And if I'm zoomed into a movie, that stuff is all masked away. But with the video processor, as soon as you pause, the processor picks up on the fact that there's more than nothing. There's more than black pixels going on down there. So I need to pop back down and show you the menus and show you the content. And then as soon as you're playing again and you dismiss it, pops right back up. So that I knew about that stuff, but the conveniences of it are really, really sweet. And again, the fact that because of my throw distance and my screen size and all of that stuff, I really ended up with this kind of like non-standard aspect ratio that there's no other way to really achieve this than a video processor. Like the JVC, right? The JVC couldn't do these things with its settings and its own menu options, and the source devices can't output accommodation for a signal that way. So yeah, I was definitely digging on a couple of those aspects, and just the knowledge that, like, once this is all programmed, it's done. It's stably set for both the Apple TV and the Kaleidescape, basically doing the same work. And anybody in the house then could come into the room and start a movie, and it's going to give them the right video processing. Whereas if I'm not there, nobody else is like manually zooming the lens memory of the projector to
like, that's too much. That's too much work. Yeah.
They'll just watch the smaller image in the smaller window.
Yeah.
So that was all pretty cool. And then of course we enabled the dynamic tone mapping, HDR processing of the Lumagen, and kind of shut down the same thing on the JVC. So we had the Lumagen is set up to do all of that. So I'm inputting HDR from the Kaleidescape and the Apple TV to the Lumagen, and then it's outputting SDR BT 2020 to the projector, which means no color filter. So I actually did get some brightness back. So I got brightness back by always using the whole vertical pixel space, versus having some dead space. I got some brightness back for having the color filter out of the processing chain. So that's nice. I don't know that I necessarily, can see that, or I'd really have to A/B it side to side. And I know one of the operative questions that's going to come up a ton is going to be like, oh, is the Lumagen tone mapping better than the JVCs? Like, I don't have no freaking idea. Like, I watched a bunch of stuff on the JVC. I've watched a little bit of stuff on the Lumagen, but any visual memory that I have to compare these things back to back, and there's no way to play a scene and then spend 20 minutes reverting it back to the other setup and then playing a scene and having like any visual memory to say, like, maybe one was better than another. But we've done, as I mentioned, I've had folks over and we've done some testing in the room. So there's a couple scenes I'd say that I'm familiar with, like the Harry Potter Deathly Hallows at the end, where the Voldemort and Harry have the wand battle and the green and white bulb kind of explodes. And then the 1917 scene where the guy's down and climbing the stairs out to the window, to the exterior of the building. So I'm eager to pull up a couple of those scenes. I haven't done that yet. That'll be kind of a litmus test, because I think I have a good enough maybe of a mental memory to know what those scenes look like on the JVC itself.
Yeah.
And if they look appreciably different, maybe not necessarily better, but different in some way, that may be better or may not be better with Lumagen, that'll be something that I can take a look at. So yeah. And then, now because there's no color filter, and the Lumagen is always outputting a single color space, the syncs are much easier. So the only thing that the only HDMI sync that needs to happen getting in and out of content between the Lumagen and the projector is frame rate, to go to 24 hertz for the movie and 60 hertz for a menu. And if I wanted to, I could eliminate that and just run 24 hertz menus. And then depending on the device, there may be some color space conversions. And something else, we'll talk about this a little bit more probably next week. But Chris had mentioned was like setting everything up as much as possible for 422 color, because the Lumagen does all of its video processing in 422 color, and JVC does all of its processing in 422 color.
Okay.
So it actually works against you to like output 444
and then have the JVC
and have to
convert that to 422 anyway.
Yep.
So you might as well take the conversion out.
Exactly.
Yep.
So now like Kaleidescape lets you fix that really nicely. So I think like in the Kaleidescape, you can say prefer, if I recall correctly, it was like we set it to prefer 422. And so everything Kaleidescape outputs, I believe now, menu, content, whatever is coming out at 422. So the original content's 420, Kaleidescape expands to 422. The entire video chain processes it, and then you see, 444 color when it's up on the screen. It makes me want or see one limitation, I guess, maybe in the case of the Apple TV, where in the Apple TV's menus, in the video menus, you can say prefer or set to 420 or 444. You can't force the Apple TV to do 422, at least in the menu. But when you start playing content, I don't know if it's because of specifically settings that Chris put in the Lumagen, telling the Apple TV what it's capable of playing back, but the Apple TV itself is outputting 422 during video playback. So, but it'd be nice to be able to do 422 on the menu, and then that would be even faster sync in and out of the menus too, I believe. So yeah, it was an interesting experimentation, and like super kudos to Chris, because like again, he sat with me on a video chat for nigh 3 hours while I just basically peppered him with questions. Yeah. We were setting stuff up and we got things running. And it's like, well, what about this? And and then we kind of figured out the intricacies again of like, how can I fill my screen? And like, oh, there's like these trim and stretch and some of these other options. And the other thing I'll say is really cool being able to, hit a couple buttons on the Lumagen remote and get this real detailed information about your video chain, right? What's coming in, what's going out, and that. So I always appreciate when devices have really strong technical info menus.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when displays and projectors and stuff just kind of hide that, you're like, I just want to access, like, I want to see what color space I'm in, what if yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's awesome, man. So you think that, I mean, do you think you could live without it? Like, do you think you could get used to this for a while and then send it back?
Yeah, we'll see. I was already thinking about it, and I'm waiting to talk to Matt. I've already bought a couple of things that I had no intention to buy this year, like the MDX, and then this theater chair offer that I've been looking at, and I really want to get some headphones. So I don't know. Eating the price of a video processor would be a tough one. So no matter what, I think this one's going along anyway, because it's Matt's, and I was lucky enough to have Matt send it to me kind of in between him no longer needing it and it going to its intended home. And I don't even know how long I'm going to have it for. I'm kind of assuming that he's going to want me to send it along before I leave for vacation, because why leave it?
Yeah, it's going to sit there for a few weeks. And,
but if he's fine with me having it for a few months, I'll keep it as long as I can and then figure something out after that. But I will be curious after I do deinstall it and revert back to what I had before, if I start to get frustrated with it in any way. But the other part of it is too, I think there's something to say about like just being pragmatic about things. You know, when I was on with Chris and we were playing that whole time, like we were jumping in and out of stuff, and it's all of the benefits of like this auto detection and the shifting and the aspect ratio management and all of the, you know, all of those benefits are very tangible when it's like demo time.
Right.
But, you know, if it's family movie night, you sit down, you start playback. Yeah, it's like it's a 25-second sync instead of a 3-second sync, because all the other junk has to happen, right? And the color filter's got to move in, and the lens memory setting has to go from 16:9 to the scope 1 or whatever it might be. But then you do that, and then you watch the movie for 2 hours, and then you turn it off.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that inconvenient.
Yeah.
So, and again, even if the family came down and watched something in the wrong lens memory, they don't know. They don't care.
Yeah.
So why do I care?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. We'll see. I guess part of it might depend on really putting the tone mapping stuff to the test and watching a couple of those scenes and seeing if I really feel like I'm floored by the results of this.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's a hard, like, especially like if you're not doing side by side, maybe like sometimes that might be hard to tell depending on what the movie is, what the scene is, what's going on. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, because I know some people that swear by the Lumagen, and other people are like, I don't need it. I mean, you know, I think you know, it definitely is a very specific use case, you know.
For sure. Yep. It's a very particular device with a particular set of skills.
Yep. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
And I can get the idea that, you know, people want to see some updates to it. I think that I think it's one of the better supported devices out there. Just, you know, speaking anecdotally and listening to people talk about it, I think the company is very receptive to having grown the platform, you know, and the fact that people have bought these processors and use them for long periods of times with features and capabilities and all that stuff added. You know, I would definitely be a proponent of an Ethernet port and a web UI. But by and large, these devices are sold by qualified and trained people and set up by guys like Chris once, and then you don't touch them, right, until something changes in your system.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty stable thing. And at that point, you could argue that the menus and the interface pieces aren't that important. But
yeah, I think we talked about this briefly, but you know, I know some people that game on theirs, on their Lumagen, and like for me, like a video processor, you're adding extra latency. So like, have you tried gaming on it at all, or
no? I suppose for the experiment of it, I could bring the PC back down and plug it in, and see what happens. My biggest litmus test for that, I guess, would be the Hot Wheels game. And I think I told the story before that when I changed from the X900H to the G2, I'm playing Hot Wheels Unleashed with my son, and there were races and time trials that I couldn't beat, and then I got the G2 and I could beat them. And I think it's entirely based on latency and, you know, just the gaming chops of that display.
Yeah.
So I suppose I could run a couple races on the TV, bring the PC down, and then see what happens on those same races. But we'll see.
That'd be an interesting test for sure.
Yeah. If I fail utterly, you know, and
blame the TV or the Lumagen. We could blame whatever you want except yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty cool. So like I said, next Wednesday, hopefully I'll get set up with Chris, and we'll do a real deep technical dive, and hopefully even be able to pull it up on screen, kind of show some of the stuff off. And we got a lot of stuff going on in the household between now and the next week and a half. So I'm going to do my best to try to spend time actually using it.
Yeah.
But
awesome, man. Awesome. So we have a few questions here. If anybody else has questions, feel free to ask away. If you wouldn't mind putting a Q in the front of it so we can easily see it, and that way we can get to it. But let's see here. Russell asks, 4K still good enough? When will 4K be over the air antenna or cable? That's a good question. I think that 4K is going strong. I don't see it going anywhere. If anything, I see it like ratcheting up now. I don't know that we'll like a lot of companies are pushing 8K stuff just because it's like the new buzzword, but I just don't think that it has much of a, in my opinion, much of a home in the consumer market necessarily, so much as like the kind of corporate, commercial market. Really large screen displays mainly benefit from 8K. But yeah, as far as like over the air antenna or cable, I wouldn't hold my breath for the next like 6 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 2030, 2035.
I don't use either one.
Yeah,
YouTube TV has 4K channels though, and they're awesome. 4K Sports is amazing.
Yeah, I have, they can barely even their 1080p broadcasts look pretty awful, like compression and all that stuff. So I don't know that. Yeah, I think 4K might be too much of a pipe dream unless they can figure something out.
Yep. YouTube TV is getting. I thought I just saw this last week. There were some rumors or news about getting bitrate jumps. I haven't actually done an Apple TV bitrate measurement on the YouTube TV streams, but I need to check that out and see what they're delivering.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't even. That would be great. I know that. Yeah, I mean, YouTube is still using their VP9 codec for all their 4K streams, from what I'm told. If we're talking about, like the stuff that we upload, I don't know like what the actual football games and stuff like that are at, or what they use. Let's see. Jeremiah asks, I can't get or he actually didn't ask. He just stated he can't get his PS5 to play Dolby Digital 5.1 through optical from his older Samsung TV, but his Apple TV works and plays 5.1 great through the same optical from TV using a Sony 5.1 receiver with optical inputs. That is strange. Trying to think, like if it works through the Apple TV, it's literally the same thing. Like if your PlayStation is set to 5.1 and then Dolby Digital, it should function identically, I would think. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question that I unfortunately don't have an answer for. Do you have any ideas, Jeremy?
I presume in this setup, the two sources are plugged into the TV via HDMI, and then it's optical back to the receiver. The main thing that I would suspect or do first would be to look into the Samsung's menus and find all of the controls that are like per HDMI input, and make sure that you got the right settings. Because I know on a lot of TVs, or the LG specifically as well, there's a couple different places in the menus to go to both, individually define the video capabilities of the HDMI port, and a separate place under the sound settings to define the audio capabilities of the HDMI port. And so maybe something's off there. That would be my first troubleshooting.
Yeah, it might be input dependent. So if he's on one input, like the Apple TV's here on input, as an example, input 1, and then HDMI HDMI 3, he has his PS5. He might actually have to go into each input on the TV and change that setting for each individual. So there might be a setting that we're not familiar with.
Yeah. I think my Sony X900H, I believe that was like global audio, but the LG I know you can tailor each HDMI input's audio needed and capabilities.
All that fun stuff can get confusing for some people too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man. Let's see. Russell asks, Jeremy, does your receiver or can it run multi-rooms with different movies at the same time?
Yep. So I've got the AVM70 that's a preamp, but they're all the same. The MRX receivers, I think the 740 and the 1140 are multi-zone. The 540 I think is not. And then the AVM70 and 90R. There is a zone 2 There's a zone 2 HDMI output, carries video and audio, and it works like a matrix switch essentially. You can in the AVM and in other. I did this when I had my Marantz 7704 as well. Tinkered with the zone 2 setups there. In a receiver or a preamp's zone 2 setup, you can consume the same source in two spaces, but you start getting into limitations when you do that, because they won't necessarily output the same signal to both zones. So if you take my setup, for example, if I were to use the same source in both spaces at the same time, right? I have one room that is a 724 Dolby Atmos audio system, and I have one room that's 2.2 channel. I have one room that's a projector, which means HDR10 4K, and I have an LG OLED, which means Dolby Vision. And you can't have devices do competing things at the same time. So if you try to matrix something to two places simultaneously, it ends up reverting to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be the 2-channel audio or the non-Dolby Vision or whatever. So even when I had my more elaborate, there was a while there, and I have the videos up, I think, from earlier last year, or even the year before now. I've been doing this that long. When I had the 7704 and I was doing multi-zone, I had for a while, all my sources ran into the AV7704, and I was really truly using it like a matrix, but I would never use the same device in both spaces at the same time. I don't have the use case to do that in my household anyway. And the other thing I would recommend, think about your sources and what you're doing with them. So, if in that multi-zone setup, conceivably speaking, I could have had one Apple TV, and I could have ran that Apple TV on the matrix to both zones. But to me, like, the Apple TV is the only device out of everything I had connected that I could see wanting to use independently in both spaces. That's the only thing that somebody might sit in the living room.
Yeah.
And somebody might sit in the theater and actually want to have a different experience on that device. So I had no matter what, I always had two Apple TVs. They're not that expensive, so it's easy to make that choice. So you got to really think about your use case there. And I would really try to avoid truly sending the same source to multiple zones. Because the other side effect of it as well is not only will it limit the active thing that it's doing to the lowest common denominator of its capability, but then, like, you go to use it in the more capable zone, and you never quite know what changes it might have decided to make in itself, right? And then it doesn't revert itself back. So
you open up the possibility for more issues, which is we already deal with enough as it is with all this stuff. So let's see here. Moving on. Julius asks, Jeremy, I have never heard you explain how you came up with the name of your show. How did you come up with the word Techthusiasm?
I remember sitting around May of 2021 when I was thinking of starting the channel, and I thought about putting my name on it, but my name didn't really mean anything. So I wanted a brand. I wanted a name that wasn't my name. Now I'm probably getting, and you too, right? We're probably getting closer to the point where our channels could be Brad and Jeremy, and it would work
together.
Fine.
Brad and Jeremy together.
merge,
right?
Like Transformers. So I don't know. I was looking for something that I thought was clever, and I was going into the idea of it being an enthusiast channel, a technology enthusiast channel, and then I smashed those words together in a couple permutations, and that's the one that came out. And I thought it was clever. So
I think it's like when you start out, you really need like a name that like people can like look at and go, okay, like I know what this is gonna be about. Right. Like yours is like, okay, he's enthusiastic about tech. It could be anything. If you home theater, routers, if you wanted to talk about routers, right? Whatever you're like, I really love networking. said by no one ever. But there's so many issues. But
Yeah.
you know, it's like home theater gamer. It's like, okay, that was what I
Yeah, you niche
you know,
down hard right away.
yeah. And so like my actual to kind of piggyback off that question, do you ever think that you would get to a point where you would go, you know what, it's like similar to how Shane Lee did. He was
Yes.
spare
Yep.
change. He went over to Shane Lee.
Yep.
Do you think that one day you could be like, oh, you know, it's just Jaremy or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
your full name?
We'll see. I
Yeah.
possibly. We definitely and Shane's not the first one to do that. I think as you watch channels get bigger, there's a lot of reversions from the branded names to the person's name. And
Yeah.
there's got to be a reason that the guys that are at those scale of channels do that. You know, Michael hasn't done it yet, I guess.
No.
You know,
I don't know
and a
if he
few
ever,
others.
he did rebrand a long time ago. It was GoPro
Yeah.
Youth Man for years. And then he just
Okay.
went to Youth Man. And someone asked me that recently, if I would just go to Brad or like my full name. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like the whole, I mean, I guess it does potentially open up for, you know, like, oh, you can make more but I don't know. I kind of like to stay within that home theater realm. You know, I don't want to start reviewing vacuum cleaners or something, you know. It's just I don't care about those, you know.
When I started it too, I wasn't thinking only home theater. And if you go back to like the channel content for the first, at least probably the first few months, I was splitting time between home theater, my Tesla. I was throwing out some Apple device video stuff so that I very deliberately, you know, technology enthusiasm allowed me to cast a wider umbrella. And then through watching the response to the channel and what I was having the most fun talking about and doing, and what I generally enjoy the most, and what it seemed like people wanted to hear me talk about the most, it really became home theater. So really a lot of the other stuff has fallen off the channel.
I do actually remember you doing Tesla stuff now that like
I haven't done
remember
one in a long time.
there was a construction on your street at one point. Like I've watched your videos, Jaremy. I know.
Yeah, the old stuff. And that's why the logo has all the, where is it? All the icons. So I need to redo this.
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
because I
You know,
need
it's
to
funny. Actually, people don't know this. Did you use Canva to make that?
Yes. Yeah.
The controller is actually in my logo.
Yeah. It's
that controller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if the TV is the same thing. It might be the same TV. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
I might have just cut it out. Like, yeah, that's so funny. You know, it's funny. I just now noticed that.
Yeah. So I think I need to redo this. But the other thing too is like, I don't know. I like the idea of it being a brand unto itself as well. I don't know. Cause I don't know the name. I like the name. I feel like I have a warm place in my heart now for that channel name, and in putting that name on a shirt and on a coffee mug is cooler than putting my own name on it. Yeah. I think. And then, you know, who knows where all this stuff goes. Like if, you know, my kids age up and they're making content on the channel, it's probably better to leave it be Techthusiasm. Yeah. You know, if they're cinephiles and audio and video enthusiasts and all that stuff, as they get a little older and, you know, turn this shindig over to them when I'm 85 or something. So, yeah,
85, a couple years, right? A couple years away. Yeah. My niece, I'll call my sister and I just hear my niece, she's 10, scream in the background, home theater gamer. And it's like, it warms my heart. And I'm like, well, I can't rebrand. Like you know, and she's always telling her friends she knows a famous YouTuber. I'm like, who is he? I don't know. Not me. It's not me. Let's see. All right. So scrolling on down. Arturo asks, how's the weather over there, Mr. Brad and Jaremy? I could say it is a cool 68 degrees here in the Orlando area.
What do we got? I got 31.
Oh, I'm so jealous. 68 degrees isn't bad. So, you know, it's not bad.
We had that big snowstorm run through last weekend. So Friday we got nailed. So many broken trees and stuff down, all that stuff all over.
Yeah. Fun stuff, man. Fun stuff. Terminator Juice asked, do you guys get sick of watching demo scenes over and over? When I get new equipment, it doesn't take long before I grow weary of demos and just want to watch full movies. Yes, 100%. I was actually, as I was talking about earlier, if you weren't here, I basically did a full manual audio calibration today. And I did watch some demos afterwards. I have some go-tos that I've heard them time and time again, and I know what they sound like. But then once that's done, it's like, okay, I want to watch a full movie.
Yeah,
You know, like I want to watch something in full, or I want to play a game. Playing a game is a little easier, you know, just because, you know, I'm already invested in this game. I might as well just continue playing it. Oh, you know, I get to hear how, you know, does it sound different after doing this?
yeah.
But yeah, and then I get like Cedia. Oh my goodness, I saw so many demos of The Greatest Showman that I just want to throw up. Like, because I'm not a fan of the movie. I'm not that, and that one scene from what's that movie with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, A Star Is Born. Yeah. I was like, just if I have to hear her sing that dang Shallow song one more time.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely get tired of watching the same, you know, race scene from Ready Player One and you know, the opening to Blade Runner 2049, all that stuff.
Yeah. Ready Player One race scene, the Batman highway chase scene, Baby Driver, bank robbery, escape scene. There's a bunch of them. I've never watched those movies, but I've watched.
Oh, really? No. So you watch the demos, but you've never actually seen the movies themselves. Yeah, the movies, Baby Driver, I would say, is probably one of my favorite Edgar Wright movies. I love his work with Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, and you know, even the Last Night in Soho that he did is very, very good. But yeah, I do have a tendency to watch. Like, I've never seen all of Greatest Showman or A Star Is Born. I'm not really into kind of those, especially The Greatest Showman. Musicals are a tough sell for me, just because reasons, I guess.
I've done The Greatest Showman. I haven't watched A Star Is Born. Just movies in general are so hard in life right now, because every night, by the time I would go to start a movie, it's already late, and I can't do 2 to 3 hours straight through.
Well, it's funny, my wife and I actually just watched 2 movies back to back the other night, which we never do. We watched Knock at the Cabin, and that was so heavy and intense that we needed to go watch like something just kind of so silly and stupid. We watched We Have a Ghost, which is that new movie on Netflix. And actually, the Knock at the Cabin had some pretty decent hard-hitting bass in that one on a couple scenes. So that was actually surprising to me. So yeah, but yes, definitely get sick of watching the same demos over and over again. There's only so many times I could watch opening to Godzilla King of the Monsters. You know,
I still need to watch that. I love kaiju stuff, and I haven't.
Yeah, that'll relocate a couple of couches or something. You know, just if you have enough bass in the room. Let's see here. I'll just highlight this. It says, Brad, I've been following Obsessive Compulsive too. I want to learn his technique too. Yeah, I just went through his stuff earlier today. I'd watched his videos a few times, and I find his videos very easy to follow. I didn't have any problem. I mean, I do have working knowledge of Rubik Q Wizard, so that probably helps. And then seeing the new features in action is really cool. I was like, wow, like that just works. Oh crap, that's awesome. So yeah, I definitely highly recommended if you have the time, and because it is not a quick process, that's for sure, but worth it in my opinion. Let's see. Jed asks, Brad, do you think your manual cal sounds better than Dirac on your system? I've not done direct comparisons to Dirac. Mainly because I don't have Dirac on my receiver. I have to use my computer because I have the digital, or not the digital, the software version of Dirac that they provided to me when I reviewed it.
That's a more limited version, right? Or no?
Yeah, you can't do Dolby Atmos with it. You can only do up to 7.1, which is, I talked about that in the review. That's probably the most disappointing thing about it. But for those that have like 5 or 7 channels, it is a great way to get the rack without having to buy a new receiver if you use your PC for everything. But if you don't have your PC hooked up, then like you're not benefiting from it at all. So like it only works on that device and that device only. So from what I've heard so far, I mean, I've only been like a couple hours in, and I used the rack for like 3 weeks when I did the review. I'm liking what I'm hearing. I told my wife earlier, I've never heard the system sound as good as it has in this house, which we've lived in since June of last year. And yeah, so time will tell. I might make a little, some further modifications. I guess the biggest thing is that I can do all of those now, like manually. Like I'm not relying on like a software to do it for me necessarily. Yeah. Like I have full manual control, and I can go in and tweak things. I can bring the subwoofer up without having to worry about, doing anything with Odyssey or limiting the EQ, which that was another thing I actually didn't even touch on. Even when you disable, like say you have the Odyssey app and you go in and you say, I don't want you doing anything to the sub, like you completely like move that slider all the way over, it still does a little bit. So like when if you do a measurement before and then you take the sub, if you do a measurement without Odyssey at all and then you turn Odyssey on, it will still do some things to the subwoofer, even if you disable the correction with the multi-EQ editor app. I don't know how multi-EQ X works. I don't have a license for that. So yeah, but yeah, I really like how it sounds. I would say if you have the time, definitely give it a shot, because like you have nothing really to lose other than the time that it takes to do it, and then listen to it, decide if you like it, if you don't like it. Yeah, I really think the guy did a great job at making those tutorials. So awesome. Nice. Awesome. Let's see. You Two Someday asks, what do you think about the new Control 4 remote? My battery life is terrible.
Yeah, so I put up my overall review last Friday, I think. So that's on the channel. I think the remote is great overall. I think it's a incredibly premium step up from the SR260, and I think it knocks out the Neo. The Neo is just a failure mode in so many ways. So I love it. I love the buttons. I love the layout. I love the feel. I do concur that the battery life had been a little weak, to the point where leaving it out and using it only a marginal amount of time in a day, it would have to be charged at least every third-ish day. So there is a version, I don't remember the number offhand, 1.1.1, I think it is, or something along those lines, that just came out a couple days ago. So if yours hasn't updated yet, hopefully it should soon, or if not, if you're your own integrator, check and see, or ask your dealer about it, because there's a lot of bug fixes in that firmware release. And there was also supposed to be some battery related fixes. I'm just looking, I think I can get the exact number real quick here. Yeah, 1.1.1 came out on it was released on 2/28, but mine only updated the other day. So, or the firmware release is dated 2/28, but I think it only started updating in systems a couple days ago. It's only been a few days, so I can't say whether it's lasted, how long it's lasted. I need to like charge it fully one night and then run the experiments and leave it out and see if I can get to like 4 or 5 days. I would very much like to be able to go a week. I think that would be ideal, that you could just leave the remote on the coffee table and charge it every Sunday night and have it reliably make it, that would be a good target in my opinion.
Did they use a small battery, like a small milliamp?
Yeah, I don't know what it's rated. I don't have it down here, but I think the battery, it's a very tall remote, but it goes about 2/3 of the way down the height of the remote, and then it kind of bulges out. And that's where the battery is.
Oh, okay. So
so it's not. Maybe it would have been better that they would have made the whole thing just thick, and they just laid a battery through the whole through the whole backside of the remote. But it also makes me really nervous for the touch model, because there is a variant of that remote, And the touch,
Cool.
I presume with the touch screen, it's going to burn more battery.
Yeah.
And the remote is a lot less tall. So unless it has a different battery technology to be way more efficient, it probably has overall less power, to the point where like that could really, really
Yeah.
run down
Negatively
fast.
impact your experience. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So we'll see. That's something I'm definitely keeping my eye on. I since the update, I need to pay specific attention to it. So maybe that's a good reminder to make sure to charge it tonight and then keep it out until it's dead. And we'll see if that's still 2 or 3 days, or it's 4 or 5, or hopefully more.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I was gonna piggyback a little bit off of what Terminator Juice asked earlier
Yeah, this
about
is a good comment.
the demos. Demos are important when setting up new equipment, but I feel like there's some dudes in the home theater community who care more for demos than they do for watching actual movies. Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I kind of wanted to touch on, which is why I highlighted the comment. But one is that the thing with for me with demos is if I'm showing it to someone for the first time, I do find a little, revitalization in that moment,
Yes.
because if someone has no idea how your system sounds, or
Mhm.
like they don't experience stuff like that. I had a couple family members over a few months ago and played them a couple of scenes from Blade Runner 2049, and they were just like in awe. And it's much better seeing their reaction, like especially someone who's just over for an hour. They don't have time to watch a whole movie,
Mhm.
so seeing their reaction is like kind of the whole reason we do this, right? Like it's part of the reason. For me, I just like how it sounds.
Yep.
But yeah, seeing their reaction is one thing. And then what I did notice is like some people kind of view it, or like I kind of view it as, some people like on the PC gaming side of stuff, they're constantly looking at benchmarks. They're constantly benchmarking their system. They're always playing with like their FPS counter up, their temperature, their GPU, their CPU. I
Mhm.
started doing that when I first got back into PC gaming, and I found that I was staring more or worrying more about performance than I was playing the game.
Yep.
And I feel like that can trickle over into other things, right? Like, so like in home theater, there are people that literally just love to tweak their system to their
Mhm.
heart's content, and
Yep.
that's fine. But like for me, that's why it took so long for me to run through this whole like manual audio calibration, because I just there for the past like few months, I've just wanted to watch stuff. I've just wanted to play games instead of
Yeah.
spending hours upon hours doing this stuff. And I think I've said it before, like if you see a 20-minute video and it's a tutorial of mine, I spent probably 20 to 30 hours total producing that video. So it's like, it's not just like I turn the camera on and shoot. There's a lot more that goes into it to
Yep.
make it viewable and as easy as possible for you guys to follow. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Did you have anything that you
Yeah. Yep. So I constantly check myself with this, and I on a pendulum, I swing back and forth. If like being in the middle is being balanced between, wanting things hooked up and running and being set up well, and also enjoying content, in the extreme is like I never end up watching anything because all I do is mess with stuff,
yeah,
or I don't mess with stuff enough, and I've got something in my system is really running substandard, and I just don't feel like messing with it. I swing back and forth on that a lot, and I really try, and have tried more and more, probably as I've gotten older, to be less on the tweaker side and
yeah,
more on the actual, like, I want to watch these movies because someday I'm going to die, and I'd rather have died having watched all the Batmans than not
right,
having watched all the Batmans and messed with my system,
yeah,
uh, or played these games or whatever it might be. So yeah, so I try to solve that on the PC side by just like spending stupid money on the computer and making it as powerful as I can by the 4090, and be reasonably assured. Yeah,
I'm
that's
right
it
there,
right there.
right. Speaking your
Money solves some
language.
of these problems. Or then that's exactly why I take the position I do with the Anthem stuff, and why I bought 3 pieces of Anthem gear. I like it. I really trust what Arc does. and I don't want to buy a mini DSP, and I don't want to do REW. I don't. I should probably get a little more motivated to like buy a meter and really figure out JVC AutoCal, because I'm pretty committed to JVC projectors, and being able to make sure that I've at least done that.
That's a slippery slope too, man. That is
exactly that.
Yeah.
And I need to do stuff too. I need to get in my room and move my subs around. And I've been saying this for 4 months on the channel. Like, maybe one of the next videos I'll finally move the subs around and find the non-null spot.
Yeah.
And I just haven't done it yet. But yeah, so it's a slippery slope. And I think too, like, some people, whatever, if tweaking, if tuning and tweaking is really where you get your fun from, and you don't feel you're missing out on something by investing your time that way, then more power to you, whatever. For me, that's not the healthy thing. Like, I'm really trying to reduce things in my life, simpler things that do better at what they do, less things, less complexity, and putting some different mentality behind stuff now for me.
Yeah, it's I just want to highlight Plasma TV for Gaming here, because this was me 100% when I started playing, and you know what, I still do that sometimes. I can sit there and just tweak to my heart's content, and then I'm like, I'm not actually even playing the game. And and it depends on the person, right? Like, there's some people that can play games with a full Discord window open up over here, talking to their friends or watching a Netflix show. That's not me. I'm fully focused on what I'm doing. I just think it's some people love it, and then some people don't. And that's, I kind of have been getting out of that. I've even, with certain games that have, like, I think we were talking about like Hogwarts Legacy last week, where it has like 5 performance modes on the console.
Yeah.
Plus you can uncap the frame rate. So technically there's like 9, and it's like, oh gosh, which one do I play on? Which one, and I'm switching between the different ones to see which ones are the one, like the one that I'm like want to play. I was like, well, performance has a better frame rate, but balanced is actually like the draw distance and the sharpness is better. It's, I don't have a 4090 or anything like that, so I don't want to move my PC over every time into the theater room, and I don't want to play on the monitors because it's just not as immersive, and have all of this equipment over there, then I'm going to sit in here and play on a small 34-inch ultra wide, first world problems, I guess. But, it's that thing where it's like, I just want to enjoy the game. Like, I just want to play the game, for me, that's where that's how I view it.
Yeah. If I can show this. So when I love the state of my system nowadays. When I put these racks in, like, it was full of stuff. And that was also kind of a little bit of a measure of the time. Like, I had a disc player, and I had every console, and I just feel like I had so much more stuff up and down and over this rack. And now it's like, it's so sparse, and I love it sparse because it's just less things.
Simplicity, right? Like, it's, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah.
And so much
you get out of hand really fast with this stuff.
Finally taking the move to sell the PS5 and the Xbox, instead of constantly jumping between all 3 platforms, debating where I wanted to play something, and just eliminating those from my life and saying it'll be the PC. I would have gotten rid of my Switch too, but every time I bring that up, my kids whine a bit more. It's like, all right, fine. And sometimes the PC does fail you, so it's nice having a fallback when their friends are over or whatever. But yeah, less things, less better things, and all of that. And I'm debating this a lot lately for myself too, because one of the, I've always been a collector as well. Like, I had toy collections, and I had a big comic collection, and other things. And I bought and sold a lot of stuff all over the years. My wife, like, ribs me all the time of like my fickle, like, oh, I really want to collect these things up. And then I do it, and then like, oh, I'm going to sell them. And I'm like, I feel so interested right now. And I have like this last month and a half, to do some comic collecting again. And like, really, but it's like, oh God, like, what I don't want is like boxes and boxes of comics. Like, there's no point to that, but you know, to have like, I don't know, have that one book, like that first appearance of Spider-Man or something, you know, crazy expensive or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's history and it's art, you know, and so I like I've got OneNotes, I've got like multi-page OneNotes that I built up of like, okay, if I were to buy some comic books, like what would I buy? Why would I buy these ones? What is my emotional response to this? And how do I manage, you know, keep it focused and keep it simple, but make it fun and you know, something I can do with my kids a little bit, or you know, so yeah, that's a big thing in my life, and it has been, is trying to be simplistic and not even less materialistic, but just focused.
Absolutely. Like I think, like as I said, things get complicated really quick.
Yeah.
Especially like with home theater. Like I remember when I went to Louisiana and I helped Michael film that home theater tour, which by the way, Youth Man is in the house.
Hey, Michael.
Hello, hello. Um, that it was a complicated system, man. Like that was like just looking at the racks and all, like everything in the racks between like, the Kaleidescape and this and that. It's like there's so the Mad VR, like all of that stuff. It just was like, holy cow. And then you go around the back and it's like all wire managed to perfection, which looks really nice, but you're like, wow, this is not like just there's so much here, right? Like it's crazy. And then I come home and I'm like, well, I got a receiver and like 7 speakers, I don't have 4 subwoofers. It seems like a lot, but it's funny, man. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's a great hobby. But speaking of speakers, Julius asks, Brad, what brand speakers do you have? I am rocking the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers, the second iteration, the FS52 floor standards, the CS22 center, and then the BS22 surrounds, just because I like the name BS. And and then actually for the in ceilings, I have the Appearing Audio Clear 6C angled speakers that I need to actually do a full review on. I have not done that yet. I really like them. I think I might just keep them because they're since they're angled, they like I had the Polk VT60s prior to that, and these sound just way better. Like I actually can hear. I mean, I find them like a higher quality speaker overall, and I can actually like hear the difference between like the angled and just this straight up down firing. Even though the Polks had the aimable tweeter, the angled woofer actually brought out a lot more detail in the like kind of the mid bass region that you kind of lose, when you're sitting off axis because of the way the speaker is. It's kind of like when you move off axis from like one of your front speakers and you kind of go outside of that cone of where it's kind of pushing sound out. Yeah. So that's what I'm walking right now. Oh, and then the subwoofers, I have 2 SVS PB3000s and then 2 SVS PB1000 Pros for near field subs. So a total of 4. That's my setup. I eventually do want to upgrade the speakers at some point, but the receiver kind of needs to come next because I'm actually reaching a limit in terms of like products and speakers I can review because my receiver does not support 4 ohm speakers whatsoever.
Oh.
I tried to actually recently run 2, just a stereo, and it shut right off. I was like, all right, this is no good. It doesn't have pre-outs or anything either. So that is something that I am actively working on. So hopefully I can find a solution or someone or some company who's just willing to send me something that I can keep long term. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. My mouse is flaking out again. Come on, mouse.
Let me get it. Russell?
Yeah, Russell's next.
Funny set when that happens. Oh, yeah. Who will maintain your system? Yeah. My daughter is, well, I don't know. It's kind of funny. Like between my 2 kids, like my daughter's the one that wants to watch movies. And she's the one that like, she'll go to the friend's house and they'll be like, oh, you want to watch a movie? And she'll be like, nah. It's like she doesn't want to watch a movie at your house because she knows that our room is
Yeah.
she's polite, of course, but she cried when we went from the 80-inch Vizio to the 75-inch the 80-inch 1080p Vizio to the 75-inch 4K Vizio in the living room back several years ago. Like she cried because the TV got smaller. So I'm super proud of her. So
she's proud. Yeah, she's like,
so she gets all of that part and stuff.
Yeah.
But then like my son's actually like the tech guy, so he's like coding, building robots, and like all this stuff. But like, so she's the audio video file, but she's not the tech enthusiast, so to speak. And he's the tech enthusiast, but he's not the audio video file. He never wants to watch movies or whatever. He'd rather build something or play a video game or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what my legacy will be.
Who knows? Who knows? I'll highlight this comment real quick because it's related to what I just talked about. I would love to consider that. My budget currently right now is 0. So I am like if some company was like, "Hey, we'll send you a processor and amps." I mean, how am I going to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
But like at the current moment, I would love to get something that at least has the flexibility of pre-outs, preferably like just 11 channels, just for reasons, I guess. Just to have flexibility to try different setups out and stuff and like make videos about it. That'd be super fun. Let's see. And actually Eden's had a question. What would you prioritize in a home theater gaming setup? Video, audio, good 2-channel, or okay 5 or 7-channel? So like for like depending on what kind of gaming you're doing, that's like a big proponent. So like if you're doing a lot of single player games or like RPGs and stuff, I mean, I would still I've always said that audio is at least 50% of the home theater experience, or like gaming and movies and stuff. So I mean, for me, it's always been kind of a 50-50 with a more lean towards the audio side, even though I'm not even remotely an audiophile. I put as much time into the video side of stuff as I do the audio side, even though I don't what's funny is I don't think I've made many videos about the video side of things. It's all just about audio, just because I think audio may be slightly more like in a lot of people's wheelhouses over like, oh, video calibration, what is that? Or like, oh, but I kind of want to get more into that at some point. So like, I think like where I would start is like where I would start with any other kind of home theater, in that get a decent display for what you need. So like if you're playing competitive, if you're playing competitive, you're probably going to get a gaming monitor instead of a TV. But I think like something like that does 4K 120 at the very minimum. Like I love the OLEDs, but some people don't like them. So like, they can get a little pricey. But finding something that can do 4K 120 with VRR as we go forward is, I think, extremely important, especially if you're going to be doing console gaming, because it's only going to get, I think, more reliant on like VRR and stuff as the generation goes on. And then as far as audio, I always recommend people start with just a good 2-channel system, or a 3.1. Sorry, if you can afford to do like the front 3, and spend a decent chunk of money on a good center channel, because that's like, if you're gonna use your setup for multiple things, the center channel is where most of the audio is going to come out of. Games still don't use the center as much as I'd like. There's still a lot of them that literally just like for dialogue, it's like they come out of the front left and right speakers. I notice it in so many games. Hopefully that kind of starts to be a trend that goes away. I don't know why they still do that. It does create like that phantom center image, but you have a center speaker there, so just use it. But yeah, I would start with like that, like at least a good 2-channel, if not a 3-channel, and then add a subwoofer when you can, or right away. And that's what like my priority would probably be in the beginning. Like it's hard to pick because I think they're all important. I mean, with speakers, the great thing about speakers is like, what's that saying? Buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So like you could spend more money on the speakers up front, but take care of those speakers and they'll last you for 20 plus years. Whereas like you buy a TV now and it might be, you might get 5-10 years out of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't upgrade before then. So yeah, I'd probably put more of the money up front into maybe the audio.
Yeah, audio has bigger legs. I would say, to me, and I speak, speaking with my own actions on this, right? I would say I value video in gaming more than audio. And that's entirely the reason that I game in my living room and not the theater. If I cared about audio, I would game in the theater where I have surround sound and treated space and subwoofers, bigger subwoofers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm completely happy with a 2-channel experience in my living room. And, I still have a pretty high-end 2-channel setup though, right? It's 2.2. I've got those 1000s. I've got an Anthem STR, and I'm running on these Parasound amplifiers. So that's umpteen K in that audio system alone for 2 channels. And it's amazing. It fills that room with sound. It's clear, it's detailed, it's articulate, it's it's all great. And I don't miss the surround sounds. I can still happily watch a movie in my living room without Atmos and without surround sounds and be entertained. But if I was playing a game at substandard resolution, low settings, and janky frame rates, I wouldn't play it. I would take native 4K, high frame rate and high settings over surround speakers any day.
Well, that's where you and I differ. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I want it all, honestly. Like, I just want everything, the whole package,
Yeah.
Like just everything.
We were just having this conversation after dinner with the family, talking about stuff and planning like these birthday parties and other things. And it's like, my wife last night, we're like, what should, the kids, this is on their ask list for their birthday or whatever. It's like, does it really matter? It's like, just, they're going to get it all eventually. Just pick off the top of the list and buy.
What is a janky frame rate?
Yeah. Anything less than 60.
Anything less than 60. So you're not a fan of 40 FPS? That seems to be where this gen is currently going.
Yeah.
If you want high fidelity on a PS5 or Series X, you're going to be playing at 40 FPS, which I guess,
it's
technically it's better than 30.
Yep.
I'm actually playing Hogwarts Legacy at 40 on the balanced with unlocked. So it's like kind of like 45-ish. And it's not as it is definitely far easier to get used to than 30. I can't even like my eyes just can't even stomach 30 most of the time anymore. I think that's just, you get so used to 60, at least like a 40, 45 is in between. And with VRR on the Xbox, it kind of smooths it up pretty nicely, although there's many issues with Hogwarts Legacy outside of the frame rate.
Yeah, the 40 FPS was one of the most genius adjustments, to come out of this generation, I think.
I don't think I think Eden's actually mentioned, oh my goodness, my mouse is still, he said 40 FPS isn't bad with a controller, but with a mouse it's rough. I used the mouse once as my mouse is like having issues right now. I've used a mouse occasionally, but I don't use I don't really do the KBM, like keyboard and mouse stuff.
Yeah, I only play with the controller. I don't do anything super competitive. But the original question was about home theater gaming anyway.
Yeah.
Not about competitive.
Yeah.
High frame rate monitor.
Michael, normally the Switch frame rate is a lot of the Nintendo first party titles are actually 60 FPS, but they're like sub 1080p. They're normally like in the 720p area. And then some other games are like Skyrim and stuff like that. And The Witcher are all at 30 frames per second. Yeah. So I guess portability, if you can't afford a Steam Deck, the Switch is actually pretty. Although for some reason Minecraft is still only 30 FPS, and I'm like, this is the simplest game. It could be more than that.
Oh, the Switch is janky, Michael. Nintendo is completely a bummer and a letdown.
Yeah, they're completely out of their touch with their audience in terms of like technology, at least.
Apple. Tim Cook. Tim Cook needs to open the checkbook. They need to buy Nintendo. They need to kill the entire Nintendo hardware division. And they need to make all of the Nintendo franchises. They need to turn the Apple TV with an M1 or an M2 chip into a Apple
emulator?
TV Pro living room device, and then make all those Nintendo developers make really awesome iCloud synced games in the Apple ecosystem. As soon as I'm promoted to CEO of Apple, Nintendo, I'll fly to Japan and I will write the check to buy Nintendo.
There you go. I'll call him right now. We'll get him on the phone.
Let's go.
Come on, let's do it. Let's see. Michael B asks, clock adjustment is too high PPM when running REW sweeps over HDMI to PC. Any idea why that happens? I don't know. Let me Google that real quick because I have not ever experienced that. I know that there is like, let's see.
I have no frame of reference to contribute on.
You're not an REW guy. This might be something that requires. So the problem with a lot of like RumiQ Wizard stuff is if you want to find information like that, you have to dig through like a 500-page manual or a 500-page like document, and I'm like, I don't have time for that. If it doesn't work, I'm never using it. Yeah, I can't find anything. Yeah, it's a good question though. I'll have to research it more and maybe put it in the comments. Because I've never run into that. Normally what happens is if I run into something like that, that's when I learn about it. When you have issues. Same with like networking and all that fun stuff is like, oh yeah, I don't stay up to date with all of this stuff all the time. Just when it breaks, that's when I go, crap.
I'll plug one thing before we grab the next question, talking about gaming and Apple. If anybody out there has kids, in a decent young enough to still pretty older age, Sneaky Sasquatch is like probably one of the games that I've had literally the most fun gaming with my son in over the course of the last 2 years. It's a game as a service built into Apple Arcade. No transactions, nothing to buy. They just keep making new content drops every couple months. It's really smart. There's a lot of like, breaking the game kind of craziness that comes out of it. Fun story. Great. It's basically my kid's Legend of Zelda. That game, when he is, 20 years old, 30 years old, and looks back on gaming, like that game will be his NES Legend of Zelda. It's that good. So
awesome. What if I'm not a Zelda fan? Should I leave?
Well,
Ocarina of Time. That was my favorite.
I was there for the original.
We're not that far apart, Jeremy. We're closer in age than you think. I have gray hair. I just shave it all off. Let's see. Father Time asks, by the way, I love the name. All I think of is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. There's that song Father Time. And anyway, he says, I've tried everything. All I want to do is get either an MKV, ISO, or M2TS file that contains Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. All I can get is HDR10. I've tried DVD Fab, Make MKV, etc. I'm not, that was the worst I've ever done. I can only speak from personal experience, but maybe you have a little more insight into this. I've used Make MKV to fold that Dolby Vision layer down into an MKV and get Dolby Atmos all through Plex on the NVIDIA Shield. So it makes me wonder, Father Time, if you could post like what like player you're using to play those files back, because that may have an effect on it too. Because I've never had a problem with Plex going that route using Make MKV.
When you do, I've never paid attention, because when you rip a disc that has Dolby Vision data on it in Make MKV, do you have to do something special to have the Dolby Vision come out, or you just put it in and you click the
It
stuff
does it
off?
for you
And
automatically. It'll
okay,
detect it right away.
that's what I thought. Because I guess maybe then Infuse on the Apple TV doesn't play Dolby Vision, because I thought I had tried. I was curious if it did, and I looked up. I'm sure I've got movies that were Dolby Vision on disc that I've ripped through just my general Make MKV process.
Yeah.
That should have the Dolby Vision data in those files, and I don't think that Infuse on the Apple TV kicked the TV into Dolby Vision.
He's using VLC on the PC and others. I have not used VLC.
Yep, I don't know.
To play back Dolby Vision. Do you have the Dolby Access app installed on the PC? I don't know if that even has an effect. I've never actually tried to get Dolby Vision out of the PC, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah, I think the Dolby app is only for Atmos.
Is it? I just know on the Xbox it has Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Like you need, but I don't know if like you actually need that for Dolby Vision to activate it.
I don't think DV is really. Is DV even? I don't know. I haven't had interest to mess around with it. I would think though that Windows doesn't really do Dolby Vision. I was kind of expecting something more formal to come of that, because Microsoft has been such a proponent of, being a leader of supporting Dolby Vision on the Xbox and stuff. And
which is funny. Yeah. Because they only have one game that supports it.
Yeah.
Which is like, and then I think only the streaming apps support Dolby Vision, right? Like you can't actually get Dolby Vision off the disc.
Yeah.
Only
some screwy limitations.
It's weird. Yeah.
But usually the gaming stuff that comes to the Xbox comes to Windows, and I don't think we've seen anything about Dolby Vision in Windows. We just got like the HDR calibration apps in Windows 11.
Yeah, I'm envious.
It works great.
I don't know why I'm envious. I could update to Windows 11 anytime. I just don't do it. I'm scared. Let's see. So use a file examiner software thingy to check the MKV file contents. I can't remember its name.
Media info. That's the one I usually use to look at the contents of the RIP.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately don't have any more insight into that, because it just works but I don't use a PC to play back the files. That might be. Yeah, I don't know. And then I think he said he's streaming it to the X700. So if he's streaming it,
yeah, that's not your player then. Your PC is just your server.
Yeah. But it makes you wonder. Yeah. It's weird. It's very strange.
Sorry, I'd like to offer more, but you've got a combination of bits and pieces that I've not used. It's been a long many years since I've used my PC, even though I've had a PC connected to my entertainment spaces. It's been a long time since I've ever used it for video. Way back, I had Windows Media Center run in and all that stuff. But
we have one Mass Effect Andromeda supports Dolby Vision on PC.
Interesting.
Do any of the Battlefront games? I know one of the Battlefront games has Dolby Atmos, but I'm not sure if it has Dolby Vision. I think it's just standard HDR. Let's see. We had a question here somewhere. Oh,
Michael's.
Yeah. We were talking about that earlier, but
I think you came in just after the longer segment on it. I'm digging it. I've learned a lot. So to give the quick cliff notes on it, Chris Deering spent a while with me on Sunday, and I've been messing with it a bit since then. I've definitely learned a lot about what it brings to the table, what having a video processor too, because I'm sure Mad VR would accomplish a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
In similar ways or whatever. But in my setup, I've got some very specific throw distance, screen filling, aspect ratio challenges. And we got that Lumagen like solving all kinds of cool stuff. So it's pretty neat. I'll be talking about it a lot in the weeks ahead.
Awesome. All righty. Well, I think it might be time to wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah.
Wrap up the stream here.
The questions, and we got 2.5 hours in. So
yeah, I think we're doing pretty good. So thank you everyone for joining. We definitely appreciate it. Jaremy, you want to say anything? Any final last words? before you go on vacation?
Yeah, let's see. So it's still going to be a packed week or a couple weeks still. So again, I've got content planned out. There's more coming, ready to publish for Control 4 Halo remotes, using them with the Apple
Yeah.
TV and Kaleidescape. I've got a couple other unique videos with some interesting takes and showing some things off, how to do a couple things. I don't want to spoil them or give the gist of the videos out, but my goal is to make about 12 to 16 videos and have them all done and in the can essentially in the next 5 to 7 or so days. And I'm a little more than halfway there. So
there you go.
So that's
that way
good.
no one knows you're gone.
Yep.
That
No,
they
I don't
just-
want to miss an upload. That's my whole goal, is to basically miss some live streams, but not miss like Monday, Friday type of upload. So I'm cranking away on that. So, and then the Lumagen stuff, more is coming. Again, hopefully next week, Wednesday night, tech deep dive on the Lumagen with Chris Deering. So yeah. I think that's about it for me. I'm still working angles on acquiring a few other things. The headphones, the theater chair idea is moving along slowly, and we'll see what else comes to fruition. How about you?
Awesome. Well, I'm working on the Hisense U7H review now. I hope to have that up this weekend. I got the Aperion Audio Clear 6C review, and then the Array HDMI extractor thing that they sent me, like the high-end $200 one. So I'll be doing that. And then, like I said earlier, if you guys weren't here or missed it, I will be doing a live stream this weekend to celebrate the 15,000 subscriber milestone that I recently hit. So super excited about that. It's going to be me and my wife just kind of hanging out, chilling, talking to you guys, answering questions, just having a good time. So if you can make it to that, I haven't decided on a day yet. So, just kind of keep your eyes peeled. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I mean, you can subscribe if you want to. You don't have to, but you can. But yeah, that's kind of what I got going on now. Kind of working on some other things behind the scenes as well. But yeah, really had a good time hanging out tonight, guys. Thanks everyone again for joining us. And let's see if we can end this awkwardly, because my mouse doesn't work properly. Thank you.
Well, one more hit here. Did the family notice the arc zones? Nope, no one said anything yet. So that was an interesting outtake from one of the last videos. So again, like Brad said, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. We will be back together. It might be a couple of weeks, but we will. You will see us back online soon enough. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, guys.